Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So I want to talk about all of the books that I read last week that I did not vlog or anything like that. So last week I actually read Third Comes Vengeance by Lilith Vincent, but I didn't have a chance to talk about it anywhere. I wanted to talk about it in this video. So this is the third book in the Promised in Blood series, and I absolutely loved the conclusion to this series. So this is about a girl named Sierra who, on her 17th birthday, these mysterious men show up, and her father, who is the mayor of this town, tells her that a week after her 18th birthday she will be married to one of these men. And that's kind of what this series is about. It's 4 men, and they're all mafia men, and they all have different types of personalities, but they're all very manipulative, very mean. Like, they don't care what the heroine wants, how she feels. It slowly evolves from there. I gave all of the books in this series 5 stars, and this conclusion was just everything that I wanted. I teared up a little bit, and I'm very happy with how this ended, and I'm very excited for the next series under this pen name. So then I read Hooked, which is a dark Peter Pan and Hook romance, and this is about Wendy, who... Did I say Peter Pan? I meant Wendy. Wendy and her father moved to this town, and she goes to a club that Hook owns. And Hook is this notorious mobster, and he's known for using his hooked blade. And he is out for vengeance against Wendy's father. And so as soon as he sees her in his club, he immediately knows her, and he knows he wants to use her against her father. I gave this 3 stars. I didn't really find this to be anything particularly memorable or like new and fresh and interesting. I find that particularly with these dark romances that get very hyped, that it's dark for the sake of being dark, for that shock value to get people to read it without like any real reason. There's a lot of time and energy put into the shock elements without any energy being put into anything else. All of the characters, Wendy and Hook, felt very one-dimensional. The villain of the story felt very like mustache twirly, and nothing about it felt fleshed out. It was just like a stereotypical like 3 stars. Honestly, I am struggling to like remember anything to do with the book, so I don't really get the hype. So then I started the Bridgerton series, and I read The Duke and I. So this is about Daphne and Simon, and Daphne has been out in society for a couple years now, and she really has no prospects. And her mom really wants to marry her off. But she's kind of content she wants to eventually get married, but she doesn't want to like rush into anything. She doesn't want to be put in a marriage with someone that she's not going to love. She has always seen her parents' marriage, and it was full of nothing but happiness, and that's kind of what she wants. And so Simon comes back to London. He was raised outside of London. He has a bad, dark history with his father, and he now is back in London after like some years of traveling. And he is, you know, a duke, and everybody wants to get their daughters engaged to him. So he is best friends with her. He's college friends with her older brother, and so they make a plan to fake engage or fake court so that Daphne will have a lot of suitors, and he will have the moms in society get off of his back. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I was entirely unsure how I wanted to rate this. If you know the series or the book or know anything, there is a rape scene at the end of Daphne raping Simon, and I didn't know, like, obviously I knew that it was going to happen, but after reading the book, I didn't know how I wanted to rate the book. It never was like a 5-star for me. It was going to be a 4-star, and I just felt like that had to take off a whole star for me. Like, it made me very uncomfortable, and Daphne was never really held accountable for it, and the hero, Simon, ends up blaming himself. And I just couldn't let that slide, I guess, with my rating. And I also felt like, do I like this book, or am I riding the high of loving the show and I'm just like enjoying reading more content like the show? Because even though there's some plot points that vary, it's very similar, and it's very easy as someone that watched the show to read it and like insert the show's things in there. And so I was like, I don't really know if I like this for itself. So I moved on to the second book, and I will talk about that. It's The Viscount Who Loved Me, and this is about Daphne's older brother, Anthony, and Kate. And Anthony has always believed that he was going to die very young, like his father did, and like I think his great-grandfather or his grandfather or his uncle, someone, like 2 men in his life died early. So he thinks that he's also going to die early. And he plans to marry. He's like a notorious rake, and he wants to settle down, get married, have an heir, so that when he dies, they will carry on the Bridgerton name. And so he sets out to marry this woman named Edwina, who is very young. I think she's like 17 or 18, and he's like 30, and she is like the prize of the season. She's very beautiful, but she has put out a stipulation that if her sister, Kate, doesn't like you, she's not going to like allow you to court her. And her sister, Kate, is also out. She's been out for several years, but she knows that she's like not the most beautiful and that she'll end up just kind of being a spinster. And she's like really okay with that. Kate is Edwina's stepsister, and her mother and father are passed at this point, and her stepmother treats her like her own child. Kate is very close with her sister, and she has no intention of letting Anthony court her sister because she knows that Anthony has this reputation. And so Anthony has to get on the good side of Kate, and he feels like this is a bad plan because he feels immediately drawn to her. He knows that this is someone that he could enjoy his life with, and so he doesn't really want to spend more time with her than he has to. I ended up giving this 2 stars. I thought this was horribly boring. I might consider continuing this series eventually, but a lot of people say that this is like their favorite in the series, and if that's the case, then I just don't see it being a very good series for me. As I was reading this is not something that I noticed in the first one because, like I said, I had the emotional pull of the series, but everybody felt completely flat. Like, I didn't understand their motivations for anything. I didn't understand what they liked, who they were as people, and it just felt like I was reading nothing. And in addition to the characters not really existing as people, the plot was not there. Overall, felt like a huge slog to get through, and I did not enjoy my time with the book, like, at all. So then I listened to the audiobook for Come Closer, and this is about a woman who gets possessed, and I gave this 2 stars as well. First of all, there's a content warning for the F slur and a lot of like derogatory language towards gay people, and it's just not executed well overall. It has a lot of repetitive language. It's incredibly boring, and I can see where the author was trying to go, but I didn't like any of it. I thought it was too slow for the type of story that it was, and also too slow for it being only like 100 pages or something like that. It just wasn't written well. It wasn't paced well. I did not like the main character. Not that you like necessarily had to like the main character, but all of it just like, I wanted her to like get possessed and die. Like, I was just tired of reading about her being a shit person. Like, she was a shit person before she got possessed. So then I read Lap of Luxury. This is the second book in the Love Don't Cost a Thing duet by Brianna Hale. We read this for the Brianna Hale Backlist Read Along Live this month. It was this month's pick. If you're interested in my full thoughts, go ahead and make sure you watch that live. But I did give it 3 stars. Overall, this was not my favorite duet by Brianna Hale. I could see how she took elements from this book and incorporated it into her later works, but as a standalone duet, not my favorite. So then I read Scandalous Desires by Elizabeth Hoyt. This is the third book in the Maiden Lane series, and I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. So this is about Silence and a pirate man named Mickey O'Connor. So in the previous books, Silence has kind of been getting fucked by her ex-husband. He ended up in a lot of debt, and in order to repay the debt or kind of resolve the debt, Silence goes to Mickey O'Connor, who is this notorious pirate in the area, and says that I will do whatever you want, but you have to like pardon these debts for my husband. And we don't really know throughout the series what happens. We kind of, as readers and as the other characters, guess as to what happens, and we don't find out until this book what actually happens. And so in the second one, her husband ends up passing away. She now is left alone, and so she takes over the orphanage that her family runs, and she becomes very close to a child at the orphanage. Mickey O'Connor ends up kidnapping her and this child, and she has a romance with Mickey. And I really, really like this. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but this had just the most charming hero that I think I have ever read. He just melted my entire heart. He understood that Silence had this fire inside of her that she didn't really let come out, and that she held this torch for her husband, and she so desperately wanted the marriage between her dead husband and her to have been true love and to be perfect. And he knows that's not necessarily true, and so their relationship is him slowly courting and seducing her, and her coming to a point where she knows that she wasn't treated well, and he shows her how she should have been treated, and it's beautiful. Like, the man is just beautiful, and of course there are things with him that she kind of changes as well, but the overall relationship is just so amazing. He is just so open and willing to talk about how he feels about her. Like, it just, like, I want to reread it already. It was so good. I loved Mickey, and I think that they were the perfect pairing together. I think Mickey was exactly what Silence needed, and vice versa. So good. I really love this series. I'm very excited to continue. So then the last book that I read this week was Her Soul for Revenge. This is the second book in the Souls trilogy, and this is about Juniper and Zane. And 70% of this book overlaps with the first book. So if you don't like storylines that follow the same plot or the same timeline, then you probably won't like this. But it didn't really bother me, shockingly, because these are aspects of that time period that we hadn't really seen, obviously because it's a new point of view. So it wasn't as if we were seeing, there's a couple scenes that we've already seen before, but most of it was new. And I absolutely loved the couple. I gave this 5 stars. I would think I like this more than the first one, which is like an unpopular opinion. The reviews for this were not very favorable, but I absolutely loved this. Juniper is someone who was taken by this cult who is basically running this town when she was like 15, and they attempted to sacrifice her, and she got away. It's like 6 years later, and she has come back because her brother is dead. And she comes back, finds out who did it, and she wants revenge. So she makes a deal with Zane, who is a demon, to get revenge on this cult and bring this cult down. And their relationship is perfection. It is very dark. There's a lot of gun, knife play. There's bondage. Like, they are going at it. And I love Zane. Leon in the first one was very broody and closed off, and Zane is just a fun, loving guy. He's very open, and he is just erratic, and he seems to be able to know exactly what Juniper needs, and all of the issues that she has, all of the traumas, he is ready to face with her head on. He's ready to help her however she needs. And I think they worked so well together, so well. And their relationship is gorgeous. It's sexy, they work well together, and it's truly one of those relationships where it's like, whatever life throws at us, whatever baggage you have, I don't care. I want to be with you. And it was just beautiful. I will say the plot, because of like where my reading is at, where my head's at, I'm having trouble getting through books. Every book that I read is dragging, regardless of how long or short it is. I'm struggling a little bit. So I felt like this dragged to the point where I had to like set the book down because it didn't want it to be a detriment to the book. But I can recognize objectively that something's always happening. This is a very fast-paced book. There really isn't any downtime. But to me, it felt as if it was dragging, but that's through no fault of the book. That's why I gave it 5 stars instead of 4, because I know like at any other time, this would have been just absolute perfection for me. If you want to check this out, this is much darker, much kinkier than the first one. And I definitely recommend checking your trigger warnings because there's a lot here. Juniper is a very hard character. She's very broken and she is very emotional and a lot of trauma there. So make sure you check your trigger warnings. But if you liked the first one and you're ready for something darker, I definitely recommend this one. The world building is just so great. The horror elements are so great. Like, it's just so good. And I'm excited for the trilogy to wrap up and we can see where this goes. Those are all the books that I read this week. Let me know down in the comments what you read or your thoughts on anything that I read. I would love to talk about them. Other than that, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.
Sitting in silence, we still feel the vibe, but you could not say a word, and I know what you just decided. We'd be right in the same wave. All the water's perfect, babe.